What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets here, Rob, and another Mets Talk Live here in the Mets offseason. Yes, the World Series is still going on with the Astros and Phillies. We will get into the Game 3 preview in a little bit later, but it's also this is all focused on the New York Mets and what are the offseason plans. There is so much to talk about, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, a lot of news. And first, I want to give a quick shout out to Joey, who gave a donation to the channel. I want to shout him out. He did it earlier when the stream popped on, so I do appreciate that. Joey, for the support, I always do. Thank you so much. And we'll get right into the news that came out yesterday regarding the right field wall at Citi Field. If you do not know, the right field wall is going to be pushed in. How many feet or how long? I'm not sure. There's a lot of speculation that there's a few reasons for that. We do know that it's going to be a club, just like the same club, like the Piazza Club, like the Jim Beam Club, like the Delta Club, similar to that, but it's going to be in the right field section, and it's going to be called the Speak Easy Club. That is the sponsor or the company that is sponsoring the club. So the Speak Easy Club is coming to the right field area. When we first heard about it, it talked about being a fan experience, which clearly the club, I'm assuming it's going to have a view of the field while you're in the club. So that'll be a cool addition to Citi Field, Citi Field is one of the better ballparks in baseball. So a little bit more attractions, I guess, never hurts. But what it does, pushing in the wall a little bit. Now, if you don't know about right field is 330 feet down the line. And when it starts to drop out a little bit to right center, it's 370. So I don't know how far they're going into right field, pushing that, pulling it in, putting the wall in. Does it mean more, that 370 between 370, which is right center field, and the right field line is going to come in about 10 feet or so? And obviously, if you don't know where that is, that's right by the bullpens too. So I'm assuming they're expanding that area. So it makes sense that you're going to have to push it in to make room for the club. Now, people were speculating, oh, that is perfect for Aaron Judge in that right center field, that he loved so much as a Yankee with that short porch in right field. Pushing that in a little bit gives him a chance to hit more home runs at Citi Field. People were talking about that, but I wanted to bring up one thing that Nate Mendelson from Metsmerize online brought up. The Mets are moving in their right field fence. They claim it's for a new fan experience, but batted ball data analytics shows how much it benefits free agents like Aaron Judge and others. There's been speculation about Aaron Judge to the Mets. There's been speculation that the Mets are going to go hard after Trey Turner. If you haven't voted on the poll yet, please do. I asked what is the biggest free agent that the Mets should target in the offseason. I had Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, Andrew Benintendi, and I'll tell you why I put Andrew Benintendi on there. And I know before I checked, nobody actually put Andrew Benintendi voted for that, but I wanted to put that on there for a specific reason to talk about that. And Judge was winning in that poll, so if you haven't voted, please do. And I also put it up on my community page, the same poll on the community page, so more people who can't go on the stream can actually vote on that poll. And there was around 75 the last time I checked that voted within the first hour that poll went up. So when it comes to that right field, for whatever reason, obviously it's for money, obviously, but obviously there's probably, like data shows, a lot of balls in right center field that the Mets, a lot of games where the balls that the Mets hit fell just short of the warning track or near the warning track, where the ball in probably 28 other stadiums are home runs. So, you could look at that and say, is it going to benefit the Mets? Yes, but it's also going to benefit other teams that hit them balls to the warning tracks as well. So there's so much to talk about when it comes to that wall. And whatever reason you believe, if it's, it's going to be perfect for Trey Turner, who hits a lot of balls to right center field. And also Aaron Judge, who hits a lot of home runs and a lot of balls to right center field. There's so many things you can look at for that. But there is going to be another club at Citi Field. It's going to be in the right field area. It's going to be called the Speak Easy Club, similar to the Piazza Club, the Delta Club, the Jim Beam Club, similar to all those type of clubs, in an area where you're probably going to get a pretty good view of the field, just like you do in right field now if you sit below that area of the wall. So with that said, what is the most important aspect for the Mets? We all know that the 2023 Mets is going to look a lot different than the 2022 Mets. There's some Mets fans that say, why don't we run it back? Why don't we sign DeGrom and Bassett and possibly Walker or possibly Carrasco? Bring those guys back, sign Nimmo, and we're all back squared to where we want to be. So you're going to bring back the same team that won 101 games, but also the same team that fell apart in September and wasn't the same team we saw in the first half that we saw in the playoffs as well. You spent over 150 days in first place in the NL East, and it took 1 week for the Mets to lose first place, end up playing a wild card series against the Padres, where the Padres basically dominated the Mets, and the Mets could not hit a lick except for game 2. So we can look at all the different things that we have to look at. I'm not a big proponent. You heard rumors that there's pretty good speculation that possibly Brandon Nimmo could get around 5 to 6 years, around $110 to $125 million. I'm sorry, I am not paying Brandon Nimmo over $100 million, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in September, when Starlin Marte went down, and I think a lot of the reason why people don't talk about Nimmo and his problems offensively was because Starlin Marte was in the lineup picking up the slack that Brandon Nimmo left in that leadoff position. And the reason why I'm going to say that as well is because when Starlin Marte went down in September, when he got hit in the hand, the guy we needed to be that spark plug, the guy we needed to pick up the slack or pick up the lineup for missing Starlin Marte, Brandon Nimmo, had his worst month of the 2022 season. Brandon Nimmo had a really good year, probably one of his best years in his Mets career. Go figure, on a contract year. I can name you a couple other guys that had all-time career seasons in a contract year. He's in the Bronx. Okay, so Brandon Nimmo had a really good year for the Mets. You look at the numbers, you look at the defensive metrics, you look at the offensive stats, you look up the offensive analytical stats, whatever you want to use, you can look at the stats for defense and offense to say Brandon Nimmo had a really good year, best year of his career in a contract year. Now, I'm not saying bringing back Brandon Nimmo is going to be a bad idea. I don't think Brandon Nimmo is going to make or break the Mets offseason if you keep him or you let him go. But when you put it into perspective and you do know that no matter how rich Steve Cohen is, there's always a budget, right? There's a lot of speculation that Steve Cohen's going to surpass the $300 million mark, possibly up to 325, 350. Even if he does that, it's kind of crazy to think that, okay, if you sign Brandon Nimmo, you are not signing Aaron Judge because you do have Starlin Marte in right. And what are you going to do? You're going to put Aaron Judge in right field, move Marte to left? Or you're going to move Marte to left field, leave Brandon Nimmo in center? Yeah, the Mets can buy every free agent player that is on the market. But you also have to look at the fact that you do have Brett Beatty, you do have Francisco Alvarez, you do have guys in the farm system that some people believe that Brett Beatty and Francisco Alvarez are going to be on this big league roster in 2023. So you also have to look at that as well. But then you hear about Shohei Ohtani. And last week I put up a poll about, do you want the Mets to trade for Shohei Ohtani? And overwhelmingly, it was yes, go trade for Shohei Ohtani. Well, okay, for all the prospect huggers in 2022, when the Mets were trying to win a division and possibly were one of the two or three best teams in baseball, and you didn't want to trade those prospects to get better to possibly win a World Series, now you want to trade basically 3 or 4 of your top 10 prospects to get Shohei Ohtani, and you also have to give him a big contract. My problem with Shohei Ohtani is not the talent. The talent is no doubt exactly what the Mets need. He's the perfect DH. He can play the outfield, and he pitches. It fits everything the Mets need in one player. But he is the same player where when he was coming from Japan, there was 2 teams that went after him very hard. The Los Angeles Angels and the New York Yankees. Everybody just assumed, well, the New York Yankees have the most money to give Shohei Ohtani. It wasn't about the money. It was about what Shohei Ohtani wanted. And when that was going on, when that whole back and forth with the Yankees and the Angels came about, obviously Billy Eppley was with the Angels. He was a big part of why Shohei Ohtani chose the Angels. But here's the bigger reason why Shohei Ohtani chose the Los Angeles Angels over the New York Yankees. One, because there is less pressure in Los Angeles as an Angel than there is as wearing the pinstripes as a New York Yankee. And he did not want to go to New York. He could have easily went to New York. There was whatever the Angels paid him, the Yankees would have paid him as well. He chose the Angels. And I want people to realize that because we talk about this all the time with players that come to New York. All the time. Can this player play in New York? And some of them just cannot. And I think Ohtani is that type of player that I do not trust personality-wise that can be a productive player in New York. The reason why he chose the Angels over the Yankees was the fact that there's less pressure. There's not all these reporters going crazy every time he has the bat out and on the mound, or he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts with runners in scoring position, and he does nothing to help the team win. And the constant pressure, I don't think he wanted. So you're going to trade your top prospects because it will take a couple of top prospects. And yes, that might involve Alvarez. Yes, that might involve Beatty, possibly even Mauricio. The same prospect huggers. And yes, it's a lot of you fans that didn't want to trade any prospects in the 2022 season at the deadline to get better for the postseason run. And as I said, I hope everybody enjoyed that 101 win season, because there is no guarantee that we're even going to get 100 wins next year. And we might win 95 and win the division. You don't know. But the bigger problem is that when you have an opportunity to win now, you do it. Because just like 2015, when everybody was raising their pom-poms and throwing confetti and like, oh, this is the team here. It's going to multiple playoff appearances, World Series. Look at the pitching staff. Oh, we just got to get a couple of new players. And basically what the Mets did in 2015, offseason going into 2016 was re-sign Yoenis Cespedes and didn't do nothing else. So we relied upon the rotation because we always thought it was going to be Generation K 2.0. Again, I was a young kid when Generation K was a big deal to Major League Baseball and the Mets, right? That was supposed to be the time the Mets were supposed to be put on the map because of Generation K. And that lasted, what, a year and a half? And the same thing happened in 2015 to 2016. And you can't always say, oh, well, worry about the future. Worry about the future. You can still worry about the future and draft well and still be a team that can win right now. I think it was a huge misinterpretation by Billy Epler and patting himself on the back for keeping his prospects, yet this team needed some bullpen help. Either if it was one lefty or even a guy like David Robertson or any reliever that could have helped this bullpen. Even though the pitching wasn't the main problem in the playoffs or even in the Braves series, it was more about the hitting, right? They wanted to continue in the season, start the season with a platoon with Dominic Smith, J.D. Davis, and Robinson Cano as the platoon DH. They DFA Robinson Cano. Everybody thought, oh, perfect, more bats for Dominic Smith. Dominic Smith got the opportunity. He failed. J.D. Davis got the opportunity. He failed. But, again, the platoon at DH does not work in Major League Baseball. Now, I'm not talking about a platoon where you want to give guys off days, the 8 players you have on the field, that you want to give a rest day on the field and put them as a DH. That's not what I'm talking about. If you want to do it that way, if you want to give Alonso a day off at first, McNeil a day off at second, Nimmo a day off at center, Marte a day off at right field, or whoever else you want to give a day off on the field, put him as the DH, you can use. I would have been more willing to do that as our DH, as giving a rest day on the field to that player. But what do you see teams do? You see teams like Kyle Schwarber with the Phillies, right? Guys like that. Guys, they know that they're going to put him as the DH almost every single day. And the teams that were successful in Major League Baseball had a consistent DH. Yes, okay, they changed it up every now and then, but consistently they had a consistent DH at every moment of the season. And it was a huge problem for the New York Mets, and it was known from day one. Everybody wanted to, give so much praise to Dominic Smith, who was a guy who had a 2020 season, if you want to call it that, which was a consideration for one of the better offensive numbers in the 2020 season, and we make it seem like that's not something that we should have looked at as a way to say, oh, Dominic Smith is a really good player offensively. We know what he can do defensively. Offensively is the problem. I always thought J.D. Davis is a better hitter than Dominic Smith. I think J.D. Davis, he was still recovering from that hand injury from 2021. People forgot that. You know why? Because people were falling over themselves in love with Dominic Smith. And I do agree with some parts of, and Chris, I see about the prospects. Keeping prospects makes sense. Absolutely. But what doesn't make sense is when you have one of the 3 or 4 best records in Major League Baseball, and you know you're good, and a couple of tweaks here and there can possibly put you over the top. Because what was the problem in the playoffs? Scoring runs. The Mets didn't have problems getting people on base. They had problems scoring runs. And it wasn't just about the home run. It was about the clutch hitting, getting the runners in. And I'm not saying if the Mets would have got Josh Bell, it would have made a big difference. If the Mets would have got JD Martinez, or the Mets would have got Brandon Jory, or any guy that you wanted that could help out this offense. It was more of the fact that Billy Epler basically stood back and got 2 guys in Ruff and Vogelback who are 200 hitters. And just because their splits look good against righties and lefties doesn't mean that they're good hitters, because they're not. There was people all in the second half that was going crazy on in the chat about, oh, look at Vogelback's on base percentage. Look at the OPS. You don't trade for Vogelback to get on base. What is that lot of crap going to do on the base pads? Great, he walks. Yay. And now we got to bring up the 7 and 8 hitters who are absolute garbage in the New York Mets lineup with the catching situation, and Escobar for almost every month of the year except for September. And that was the biggest problem with the Mets. And then Billy Epler, once again, pats himself on the back for keeping his prospects, yet we got nobody in the bullpen that was actually any good. And to get a last-minute panic move and get a bullpen arm at the last second at the trade deadline, who was a guy who was okay at best, didn't really, one, help this bullpen. And again, it wasn't more about the bullpen or even the pitching for the bullpen mostly. That was actually a problem in the postseason, in the 3 games they played against the Padres. Obviously, it was the starting pitching in Baston and Scherzer. And even DeGrom was good, but not great. Once again, it shows when you have the opportunity to make your team better, you do it. And I'm not saying, okay, trade Francisco Alvarez for David Robertson. That's idiotic. But when the Phillies give their 21st ranked prospect in their system for David Robinson, and the Mets said they couldn't make a bullpen move because teams were asking for their top 10 relief prospects, is an absolute joke. All right, that's just Billy Epler telling you that either one, his negotiations in trade rumors or trade talks are garbage, or he was not willing to trade anybody in his top 25. And if you're going to do that, then why even pick up the phone at all? But it was okay to trade Colin Holderman, who was actually pitching well for us in the bullpen, for Daniel Vogelback, who's a 200 hitter. Give me a reason why that makes sense, because it didn't. And I wasn't against the Vogelback trade if that wasn't the only trade we made that benefited this lineup. You traded J.D. Davis and 3 prospects for Darren Ruff. So you traded your lower level prospects, 3 of them, and J.D. Davis, who was on your roster, and I still thought was a better hitter than the Mets actually gave him a chance or gave him credit for, and never really took his injury into consideration and traded him. And with that said, now we look at the fact that now we had to put all our hope and dreams of the 2022 season in the playoffs on our pitching staff. Because going into the last week of the season, or going into Atlanta, for example, up one game with DeGrom on the mound and Scherzer and Bassett, the Mets had it in their hands. But we put the pressure because the whole month of September, we could not score runs. So every time a starting pitcher, and it never bodes well for a starting pitcher, knowing if he's not perfect, he can lose the game 2-1 or 1-0. That's what Scherzer, that's what DeGrom, and that's what Bassett. This is not excuses for those guys who pitch like crap against the Braves in the postseason. That's not an excuse. But when you go into a pitching, when you go on the mound and you know you have to be perfect because your team's not scoring, it puts more pressure on that pitcher to put up zeros. And you're not going to see Scherzer go 9 innings all the time. You're not going to see DeGrom go 9 innings because the Mets wouldn't let him go past 7 innings. And the same thing for Bassett. You're not going to do it. And to see where every moment in every game, the New York Mets had opportunities in those games. And you could talk about managerial decisions, about putting in certain bullpen arms at certain times when you're only down a run. And that changed the difference of the ball game. But it came down to the fact that when your team doesn't score, you can't put all the pressure on a starting pitcher. Great. We got Scherzer go 8 innings and give up no runs, and the Mets don't score nothing either. Now you got to go into the bullpen and pray that the bullpen can get the job done. The most important thing was the fact that the Mets didn't score in September, and it showed in the spotlight against the Padres in the wildcard series. They could not score. That was the bigger problem. Even when Scherzer was giving up runs, again, he really gave no hope, and I'm not giving no excuses to the pitchers. But did the Mets score any runs that was willing to get back into this ball game in the postseason? No. Did the Mets in September, when they were facing bad pitching, score runs? Nope. So every night you had to have a pitcher be perfect, and then also ask your bullpen to also be perfect and pray the Mets score runs. The bigger problem was the Mets were not scoring runs when it counted most, and it bit them in the ass in the Atlanta series to lose the division, and it bit them in the ass in the Padres series. Granted, Scherzer sucked game 1. DeGrom was okay, possibly good. Also, game 3, Bassett was garbage. But the Mets did not score. They didn't put up any fight offensively to put any, make the pitcher of the other team sweat. And guess who knew that? Scherzer went into that game 1 knowing the Mets were not scoring runs over the last couple of weeks of the season. So they had to be perfect. You put more pressure on the pitching staff when, yes, pitching almost 80 to 90% of the time wins you games. You also have to score runs, right? You don't score runs, you're not winning. You can't put up 0 runs and win a ball game. That's just mathematical fact. You have to score runs. And everybody could say, oh, well, we didn't have home run hitters. True. We talked about that all year. But in the first half, the Mets were scoring a ton of runs. They were number 1 in baseball in the first half in scoring runs. You know what it came down to? Scoring the runs the same way they did in the first half. When you got that runner on second with less than 1 out, they got that hit to the right side, or that they hit the ball to the right side to get the guy to third base. Now we got a guy with 2 outs on third base, and they were getting the 2-out hits. They were getting runners in scoring position. They were getting guys on third base for less than 2 outs. They were doing the little things. They were getting sac flies. They were doing bunt squeezes. They were doing everything they can to get those runners in. And what you saw mostly in the middle of August into September was the fact How can they score runs if you already know that going on the mound, if you're Scherzer, even if you have all the confidence in the world, you're going to pitch well, there's no guarantee this team's going to score runs. And let's be honest, the Padres pitching was good, but when you put up terrible at bats after terrible at bats, you're not going to win. How do you think the Phillies beat the Padres? Yeah, the pitching was good, but the Padres scored runs in those series. In that series, the Phillies scored runs every game, so it always put pressure on them on the Padres. And you saw Joe Musgrove wasn't great. You saw Yu Darvish wasn't great. There wasn't these. They're good pitches, but they're not great pitches. You got to score runs. There's a big reason why the Phillies are in the World Series. It's not just because of their pitching. It's because they're averaging over 3.5 runs a ball game in the playoffs. That's how you're going to win ball games. Yes, good pitching, but the Phillies are tied with the Houston Astros. Yet, how many runs did they score in the first game? 6. And they scored, what, 2 in the second game? But it took the Astros nearly all game to win that ball game. And the Phillies were down 5-0. Last time I checked, the Mets were down 5-0 to the Padres, around the same amount of innings left in the ball game, yet the Phillies came back and won 6-5. Why couldn't the Mets do that? Because they could not score. Their offense was putrid in the second half, specifically late August, all of September into the postseason. That's the bigger problem. So with that said, there's so many things that we can talk about. Some people want Judge. Some people want Trey Turner. I'm a big proponent. I think the number one target, and this is not about re-signing or giving extensions to guys that were currently on the Mets in 2022 who are free agents now. I'm talking about free agents from outside the organization that was on other teams that are now free agents. Trey Turner is your number one target for the New York Mets. Not only is he can be your leadoff hitter, he is a better all-around player than Brandon Nimmo. You can put Trey Turner in center field. He is athletic enough to play center field. Defensive analytics are going to tell you that that's a bad idea because Brandon Nimmo, according to analytics, is a great center fielder, right? But if it wasn't for analytics telling Nimmo where to play and playing deeper in center field, Nimmo, what happens with a lot of times with Brandon Nimmo playing deep, a lot of balls drop in front of him than normally if you play a rather average center field or straight up center field, because Nimmo is terrible going back on balls. It's easier when you play deep to go right and left in the gaps. And that's why Nimmo got to a lot of those balls, because he can go right or left. Jose, Mets are not letting Diaz go to the Phillies. It's not happening. All right. The Mets are going to pay the most money, and that's where Diaz is going to go. Now, I do think the Phillies are probably going to go after a shortstop. A guy like Swanson will fit perfectly with the Phillies. A guy like Trey Turner is another guy, or even Correa for that matter. Any of those shortstops are probably a good match for the Phillies. Now, again, just because the Phillies are in the World Series doesn't mean that the Phillies were a really good put-together team. No, they got hot at the right time, just like the Braves got hot at the right time, just like the Nationals got hot at the right time. Nobody can say the Phillies are a better team than the Astros, but that doesn't mean the Phillies are not going to win the World Series, right? We've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years that the best team does not win the World Series. It's just not what it is. And that's why when fans and Brave fans were saying, oh, we are better. No, we're better. And back and forth we went. We did this all season. And we used to look at the record and say, look, we're better. Or no, our lineup's better. Yeah, but it comes down to the fact who gets hot at the right time. The Phillies were the hot team. Just very simple. People were picking the Padres to be in that hot team after they destroyed the Mets. Well, the Phillies were hotter than the Padres, and they kept on doing what they were doing basically the whole second half after they fired Girardi. And again, the bullpen is basically the same bullpen that we saw the whole season with the Phillies, except for David Robinson. Basically, it's the same bullpen. That same bullpen that was blowing games all first half is basically the same bullpen. But that same bullpen has pitched well in the postseason. How can you predict that? You cannot, right? One of the better bullpens in baseball was the Braves. Well, how did that help the Braves against the Phillies? Because it didn't, right? The Astros have one of the better bullpens in baseball or in the playoffs, and they're in the World Series. But you can say that their starting pitching isn't great either, but they found a way to get over whatever they had to go over in the American League, which was just the Yankees for the most part and the Mariners. But we all talked about that the American League was very, very weak. And there is no doubt that we all assumed that the Yankees and the Astros were going to make the ALCS because the American League was very, very weak. And that's not surprising that the Yankees and the Astros were the last two teams standing in the American League, because was there really competition in the American League for those two teams? No, because there was a lot of mediocre teams, and even the teams that were expected to be good, like the Blue Jays, like the White Sox, underperformed in the season. And that's the bigger problem. Well, Chris, if they keep it to 6 teams making the playoffs, there's going to be a time when a 6 seed, the last wildcard spot, is probably going to be 500 or 1 or 2 games under 500. It's possible, but again, we talked about this, and I kept on saying it, and some people don't want to agree with it, but it's a fact. Just make the playoffs. The Major League Baseball playoffs now is very similar to the NHL playoffs. And I put the Philadelphia Phillies and the Nationals in the same category as wildcard teams. The St. Louis Blues of the NHL a couple of years ago were one of the worst teams in the NHL. They picked up in the second half, got the 8th seed, and won the Stanley Cup. That's the way I look at the Phillies and the Nationals in 2019 and this year in 2022. The Major League Baseball playoffs is now a crapshoot. It is not about the best team. It is about, are you better in a 3-game series, in a 5-game series, in a 7-game series? Because there is no mistake that the Dodgers were 15-4 against the San Diego Padres. How did that turn out? The Mets were 14-5 against the Philadelphia Phillies. All right, they didn't play each other. I think the Mets matched up well against the Mets. And the reason why I think the Braves lost to the Phillies, because the Phillies gave the Braves the problems all year, because the Phillies matched up well against the Braves. It is more about matchups in the postseason than there is this a good team or is this not a good team? Stop looking at the rosters and look at more about the matchups and how they pan out, because nobody can tell you that the Dodgers matchup favored the Padres, considering how good the Padres or how bad the Padres were against the Dodgers all year. But you know what happened? Guys that didn't perform during the season performed during the postseason against that team. And it's crazy to me because the Dodgers, who were one of the biggest run-scoring teams in baseball, were one of the worst teams in the postseason with runners in scoring position. Or runners on base. They could not get the big base hit to score runs, and that's why they lost against the Padres. And I know Ken and Chris, I agree with you guys. I do agree that 162-game season is too many games, but how many years, and this goes to the same fact, if there's 150 games, the Phillies wouldn't be in the playoffs. If the Nationals played 150 games, they wouldn't be in the playoffs. If the Mets next year win 88 games, and it took them to game 162 to make the playoffs in the wild card, yet go on a huge run and make the World Series and win the World Series, nobody's going to be complaining that the 162 game season is the problem. The reason why we're saying 162 game is the problem is the fact that our Mets are not that team that benefited from 162 games. The Nationals and the Phillies would have never made the playoffs if there was only 150 games. There would have been some other team in the playoffs because they weren't at the level of where they were supposed to be to make the playoffs. So, with that said, if it was the Mets that took 162 games to get into the playoffs, we wouldn't be complaining about the 162 game season. I think it's a little too long as well, but we all know it's about money with Major League Baseball, and that's just a fact. That's why there's more playoff teams in the NBA now. That's why the NHL still has 8 playoff teams when some people said they should have knocked it down to 6. Major League Baseball is not going to decrease playoff teams. It's not going to happen. Right now it's 6. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 7 at some point, or probably 8. The 162 game season isn't the problem. The problem is too many fans think their team is better than they actually are. And that goes for Met fans, that goes for Braves fans, Dodger fans, Philly fans, Yankee fans, and so on and so forth. That's the bigger problem. And until you take off the rose-colored glasses for your team and take a step back and actually look at your team, you can see the flaws, right? We had Dodger fans all over this, right? We don't see Dodger fans anymore. Shit, we don't even see Braves fans anymore, right? After they lose, Dodger fans go back to Hollywood and, complain about everything Hollywood complains about and the Hollywood elites complain about. And Braves fans go right into Georgia football or the Atlanta Falcons. And the fact of the matter is that New York, and as much as I dislike Yankee fans, and it was very, very fun to see Yankee fans bitch and moan about everything that wasn't exactly on the field. No, Chris, Met fans never show up to Citi Field, but Met fans have huge support in New York and more passion than a lot of other fan bases in New York. Met fans don't show up. There's a many reasons why Met fans don't show up. And I can't really pinpoint it, but if I put it into perspective as this way, right? Yankee Stadium draws because the Yankees have many reasons why Yankee Stadium draws many fans. And one is because when you got dominance like the Yankees have, and I'm not talking about winning World Series, being in the playoffs every year, and the brand got so big in the late 90s, much more than it was in the 80s when they were non-existent, when Yankee Stadium was a ghost town in the 80s and parts of the 70s, right? It comes down to the fact that when you don't have consistent winning teams making the playoffs every single year, or 5 out of 6 or 7 out of 10, your fans are not going to show up. People talk about, Met fans don't show up. Well, yeah, when you get beaten down by an organization that didn't care to win or spend money year after year after year, Met fans get broken down. But you know what? Look at the ratings on TV viewership in New York. SNY has one of the highest viewerships in the country. And you know what? They actually were. Now, you're never going to beat the Yankees in ratings or attendance, or at least not at this moment. But this is year 3, going into year 3 of Steve Cohen. Slowly but surely, more season tickets holders, more season tickets are going to be sold, right? Because they have confidence in ownership. That's a big deal. And I can guarantee you, all the Yankee fans who were complaining about Hal Steinbrenner not spending money when he only possibly signed Judge and nothing else, Yankee fans are going to have a problem. If they lose Aaron Judge, watch how fast ticket sales go down. It's season ticket wise. And you have to remember the fact that Yankee Stadium has numerous trains and public transportation that goes past Yankee Stadium, right? You could see about Manhattan, Westchester, upstate is mostly New York Yankee fans. A lot of people work in the city. A lot of people work in the city, get to the city by train. A lot of people live in Brooklyn. A lot of people live in the Bronx. A lot of people live in Queens or possibly Long Island. But Yankee fans, when they travel from New York, right, you got over 13 trains that go that connect to Yankee Stadium. Yes, the Long Island Railroad, but if you look at Long Island is predominantly Met fans, right? Not many ways to get to Citi Field other than the 7 train and the Long Island Railroad. But anything west of Citi Field, you got to get multiple connections to get to Citi Field. It's not easy to get into the city unless you're in the area of the 7 train to make multiple connections. And I think it's easier from Manhattan to get to Yankee Stadium and Westchester to get to Yankee Stadium than it is to get to Citi Field. And that's not an excuse for Met fans. I think the fact that the Mets, no, I'm talking about West. West is Manhattan. North is Westchester and the Bronx when you look at Citi Field. And the problem is the fact that Met fans have been beaten down for years. It's a fan base that has been beaten down by ownership, been losing season after losing season after losing season. You're not going to get a fan base just show up because the Mets are having one really good year, because we've seen it before. Right? We've seen 2015, 2016, attendance rose dramatically because everybody thought, well, 2015 was good, 2016 must be good. The same thing that's going to happen in 2023. You're going to see a lot more attendance in 2023 because there's going to be more season ticket plans sold. More people are going to be buying tickets because of the year of 2022. Now, September and the disaster of the wild card round might hurt ticket sales a little bit, but if the Mets make the playoffs 5 out of the next 6 years or 6 out of the next 6 years, of course attendance is going to rise a little bit because, let's be honest, guys, take away the bandwagon fans or the event status that the Yankees have. People are not just going to say, oh, let's go to a Yankee game today. All right? Take about 10,000 people who just go to Yankee Stadium because it's an event, because the Yankees have become an event, right? That's why the Garden is always sold out for the Knicks, who've been terrible for 20 years, because the Knicks are an event. The Rangers that sell out almost every game are an event. The Mets aren't an event because they haven't consistently won and make the playoffs every year. Yeah, again, Chris, you're not listening. The Long Island Railroad comes from Long Island, right? The Long Island Railroad is a stop at Citi Field, correct. Predominantly Met fans are east of Citi Field for the most part. So, yeah, you're going to get the Long Island Railroad, but I'm not talking about the Long Island Railroad. I'm talking about the Manhattan people, the Bronx people, the Westchester people, predominantly upstate New York, Yankee fans. They have alternative routes to get to Yankee Stadium. And a lot of people that work in Manhattan live east of Manhattan. Yes, the Long Island Railroad does come to Manhattan. I agree. But you're looking at a bigger fan base that comes from northwest or north or west of Citi Field. They're not coming to Citi Field, right? Yankee fans will come towards Yankee Stadium because, let's be honest, there's a lot more ways of getting to Yankee Stadium. Citi Field, it's easier to drive there than it is taking public transportation. Yankee Stadium, people take public transportation, and that's another reason why, because parking is a disaster at Yankee Stadium. So more people make it's easier to take public transportation to get to Yankee Stadium than it is to get to Citi Field. Yeah, exactly, Mike. Long Island, it's easy to get to Citi Field. Jump on the old Long Island Railroad, drive there, absolutely. But you also have to look at the Yankees for the last 25 years have become an event. Just like the Knicks are still an event, even though they suck for 20 plus years. So why does the Knicks draw and almost sell out almost every game when they suck? Because it's an event. Yankees made themselves into an event because they make the playoffs almost every year. And when you make the playoffs almost every year, you have a shot of winning the World Series. That's what the Mets have not done. The Mets in their history hasn't made the playoffs 3 consecutive years in a row. That's the lack of consistency that makes your team not an event. Citi Field is 100 times better than Yankee Stadium. Why don't people go to Citi Field more than Yankee Stadium when the attractions at Citi Field and the restaurants and the food and everything else about Citi Field is better? Well, number one, people that want to go to an event want to do things before they go into the stadium. Citi Field doesn't have nothing around it. Yankee Stadium does. You can talk about Billy's, all the bars, all the restaurants. So when you look at Citi Field and why it's not an event, there's no doubt. You can't tell anybody that nobody can say that Yankee Stadium as a stadium is better than Citi Field because it's not. Citi Field is a different atmosphere than Yankee Stadium when it comes to attractions inside and clubs and restaurants and foods and everything like that. And the setup is much better. You can walk around Citi Field and still see the field. Yankee Stadium, you can't walk all the way around Citi Field and actually see the field. You get a brick cement wall in front of your face for most of the times you walk through the corridor. And that's the difference. And that's why Citi Field should be a place where people want to go. But once again, there's nothing around Citi Field to do before and after a game. Now, I think Steve Cohen is going to develop around that area. He's looking to get a casino license to put a casino right in where the Chop Shops used to be. There's an area right left of Citi Field that is vacant, that they're doing some construction work. And listen, when you put a casino in an area like that, and obviously restaurants around that area and bars around that area, well, that's going to attract more people. And when it attracts more people, people are going to say, hey, let's go to Citi Field, watch a baseball game. We can, hang out before the game, hang out after the game. And that's the difference when it comes to that. Until the Mets as a team or as an organization becomes an event, and that takes winning. And I guarantee you, if the Mets make the playoffs 5 years in a row, well, guess what? Now it's going to be an attraction. It's going to be an event, right? Six Flags is open all year round, right? Not a lot of people are going to go to Six Flags in January, but people go in for Oktoberfest. Even though it's still cold, they still go because it's an event. When you consistently win and make the playoffs every year, you're going to become an event. The Knicks, on the other hand, was an attraction because when in the 90s, when they were very good, you got a ton of Knicks fans. You got a lot of people that were loyal to the fans, to the team. And the Knicks and Madison Square Garden and the city in a whole, right? Before you go to a Knicks game, what can you do? You can go to restaurants, you can go to bars before the game. What can you do after the game? Go to restaurants, go to bars. You can't do that at Citi Field. What Yankee Stadium has as an attraction is outside the stadium, restaurants and bars. And also, it's an event to go into Yankee Stadium because the Yankees make the playoffs consistently every year. So that's the issue that it comes with Citi Field. Until Citi Field around the ballpark gets restaurants and bars and possibly a casino, it's not going to be the event like Yankee Stadium. But if the Mets consistently win and make the playoffs every year, say 5 years straight, you'll see how fast you'll get easily 35 to 38,000 people at Citi Field on a consistent basis. And I think people forget the fact that the Mets have been not a good franchise. When you don't make the playoffs for 7 years, well, you're not an event. And why do Met fans want to show up to an owner in the Wilpons that don't spend money or don't do anything with that? And that's the difference that I think Steve Cohen is going to make, right? Last year, they had a record number of season ticket plans sold in 2022 because of the fact Steve Cohen is becoming the owner and doing different things around the ballpark. Old Timers Day, retiring numbers, making Citi Field a lot more pleasant place to come. You know, he's already making changes to Citi Field with the right field. Fences moved in, putting in another club. He wants to make Citi Field an event, place to go to. People talk about it, right? The Yankees haven't won since 2009. Why are people still going, right? The Yankees have won World Series in the last 23 years or 22 years. So why is Yankee Stadium still an attraction to people? Because let's be honest, do you think diehards are the only reason why diehards are filling up Yankee Stadium? No. If you only put diehards in Yankee Stadium, you're going to have about 30,000 fans. The other 10,000 or 11,000 fans are people who just want to go to a game because they have something to do. It's an event. There's things to do outside of Yankee Stadium. That's the big thing that goes down when it comes to the Yankees, when it comes to Citi Field. Because Met fans need a consistent team that goes to the playoffs every year. We haven't had that in our history. You know, in the 80s, when it came from 85 to 89, when the Mets should have won probably 2 championships at least, the Mets were the talk of the town, not the Yankees. Why? Because the Mets became an event. They became an attraction. And it only takes, it can put it this way. It took the Yankees 20 years of consistently making the playoffs to become an event. It takes the Mets of the 80s within a 3-year span to people call a Mets town in the 80s, right? Everybody talked about it, right? And it was an attraction to go to Shea Stadium. It wasn't an attraction because it was a ghost town in the late 80s at Yankee Stadium. Why was that? Because the Mets were fun. The Mets were an event. The Mets were an attraction. The Yankees became an attraction and an event over the last 20 plus years. And yes, mostly it's because of winning. Well, until the Mets consistently win, make the playoffs, and possibly a couple or at least one world championship, but consistently make the playoffs, you're not going to become an event. And that's the bigger problem of why you don't see it. People are wondering why, wow, the last week of the season, the Mets are trying to hold their division. Why a game against the Nationals, they're rolling 20,000 fans, 22,000 fans into the stadium? Well, that's the reason. People are not going to go out of their way just to come for a baseball game. No, the non-diehards. You know, the people who are on the fence about going to a baseball game, who are probably Met fans, but, you know, they can do without baseball. They're not just going to go to Citi Field for baseball. Citi Field, for people that love baseball and love the Mets, go there because they love baseball. They love the Mets. People who are on the fence about baseball or the Mets are looking for other things like, hey, let's go to a restaurant before the game or a bar before the game, and then we can take in a baseball game. You can't do that at Citi Field. You can't do that outside of Citi Field. You know, you have to go to other parts of Queens or possibly eat before you go, or meet up at a restaurant before the game outside of the Citi Field area to go and then go to Citi Field. That's the problem. You know, you can go to Billy's outside the Yankee Stadium, have a couple of beers before and meet up with friends before you go into Yankee Stadium. You can't do that at Citi Field mostly. Yeah, you can tailgate in the parking lots, but that requires decent weather, right? You can't just go, if you go in the playoffs or you go with the 7 line or something like that, they tailgate in any weather. And that's the thing that's interesting about why, you can look at other teams. Look at Atlanta, right? In Atlanta, with Truist Park. Around that stadium, there's so much to do. Philly, there's bars. There's a casino right across the street, live. Right across the street from Citizens Bank. There's something to do before the game and after the game. That's why Citizens Bank packs the house. Even during, Thursday night against the Washington Nationals, they still have about 33,000 people at Citizens Bank, right? Look at all around baseball. Who attracts like the Yankees? One, it's because they consistently make the playoffs every year, so they become an event and an attraction. And what other things you have to look at is outside the ballpark. What can you do before and after games? Until development happens, which I think Steve Cohen is working slowly to doing. New York doesn't like Steve Cohen, right? They gave him a hard time when it came to certain things with developments. He's trying to get a casino license. And if he does that, that's when development's going to really start taking off around Citi Field. And that's when Citi Field is going to become a place to go to, because when you have a few drinks, you went to a restaurant, you bet in a casino, hey, let's go to a baseball game. Why not? That's why Yankee Stadium is becoming an attraction, because people want a beer, want to have some food. And hey, you want to go to the Yankee game? All right, let's go on the app. Let's go on our phone and buy some tickets, go to a game. There's a lot of tickets sold an hour or two before the game because people decide, hey, let's go to a game. Yankee Stadium's right there. We just ate. We had a couple of beers. Let's go to Yankee Stadium. That's until the Mets consistently win and make the playoffs. And I'm not talking about just winning World Series after World Series. That's not the case, because the Yankees, since 2001, has won World Series, and that's over 20 years. So why are they still an event? Why are they still an attraction? They have one World Series. The Red Sox have, what, 3? Right? The Giants have 3 within the last 20 years. The Braves have 1. The Nationals have 1. Even Nationals. There's not a, Washington, they're basically a bandwagon, front-running type of town, especially for a baseball team. You're not a Nationals fan for the most part. Their fan base is a joke. But you know what? They have a couple of bars around that area. There ain't really much to do, but guess what? You can walk around the Nationals parking and you can see certain things like, the views of, the Washington Monument, the Capitol, and all that other stuff. Well, Mike, yeah, that's true, but, you were getting Wednesday games where the Yankees were facing, I don't know, the Royals, and they were averaging 35,000 fans. But again, because they're an event, an attraction, and there's things to do before and after a game, nobody's going to tell you that outside of Yankee Stadium is, in a suburb where it's safe, because it's a sketchy area around Yankee Stadium. There's no doubt about that. But there's things to do outside of Yankee Stadium. Yeah, Teddy, exactly. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Yankee Stadium, Yankees were selling out Yankee Stadium when the Yankees were going through a terrible time in August. You know why? Because people, I can assure you 40,000 tickets weren't sold a week before that game or 2 days before that game. People buy tickets randomly, like, hey, Mets fans have to decide. If you're home one day, you can say, oh, you know what? I can eat at that restaurant next to Citi Field, and then I'll take a bowl game. No, Met fans have to decide, hey, should I take that 45-minute trip drive in just to go to a baseball game for 3 hours? I got to travel an hour and a half there and back. So I got to travel 3 hours to the game there and back to stay there for 3 hours and watch just the baseball game. I'm not doing anything before or after. But you know what? If I drive to, if I go to Yankee Stadium, at least I know I can have a couple of beers before the game, eat some food, talk with a couple of my friends or baseball fans, and have a fun time. Yeah, Oakland, there's nothing around that area. Dodger Stadium, let's be honest, Dodger Stadium during the week doesn't sell out. They don't have 35,000 fans every single day, and they consistently make the playoffs. You know why? Because you're not going to Dodger Stadium to have a good time before and after a game. You can't tailgate in the parking lot at Dodger Stadium. So unless you're actually going to watch a baseball game, what are you doing? Nothing. So that's the thing. And we got way off track, but the matter is, The whole fact is that until the Mets consistently make the playoffs, and you're going to see, because the Mets had a good year this year, you're going to see an uptick in attendance this year because the Mets were a better team last year. People expected the Mets to go far. People, and it also depends on the offseason. The Mets have a big offseason. Tickets are going to be sold. Attendance is going to be high. Yeah, Alien, I know. When I drove there with my dad last year, my first time at Dodger Stadium, I was like, geez, you're driving through a suburb to get through an isolated area surrounded by mountains and nothing else and trees. That's basically it. It's a beautiful ballpark. The weather's great, but there's nothing to do there. You have to go outside of the area of Dodger Stadium just to find a restaurant. So it's crazy, and it's so much for reasons why. Again, I think the big reason is if there was more to do around Citi Field in the proximity of Citi Field, you would get more attendance. That 25,000 crowd on a Wednesday might be 30,000 because 5,000 people were around the ballpark going to a casino, eating in a restaurant, drinking in a bar, and decided to go to the game last minute. That's why Yankee Stadium gets averages 35 to 40,000 because that 5 to 6 to 7,000 people who decide to go to the game while they're at the bar or while they're at a restaurant go right there. And it's that simple. So let's get a few minutes into the Game 3 preview. Astros and Phillies. The series is tied at 1. And if you don't know, I am going live during Game 3 tonight at 7:30. So if you want to pop on at 7:30, we're going to do a live stream just like I did baseball games for the Mets all year, just like we do with the Mets. I'm going to do for the World Series Game 3. Noah Syndergaard on the mound and Lance McCullers Jr. on the mound for the Astros and the Phillies. So we'll watch the game, fan reaction, and all that fun stuff. Hopefully you guys tune in for that. I'm not going to talk about much because I hope the Phillies lose the World Series. I'm not going to be a proponent, a big supporter of the Astros, but I want the Astros to win the World Series only because I don't want the Phillies to. Because again, as a Mets fan, I don't want to see another NL East team in the last 3 to 4 years, 3 out of 4 years, win a World Series, and the Mets haven't yet. Could that change next year? Sure. But with that series, you saw the comeback in the Phillies in Game 1, down 5 runs, win 6-5 in extras on a JT Realmuto home run. And let's not get into talking about JT Realmuto because I'll speak for 6 hours about JT Realmuto and why the Mets, in any capacity, thought, let's go after James McCann quickly because we didn't want to wait for JT Realmuto is an absolute joke. All right? I don't care. You didn't have to overspend for JT Realmuto. The Phillies that year, specifically Dombrowski, said they were not spending big in that offseason. They weren't looking to bring back JT Realmuto, right? There was all indications that JT Realmuto was going to get $150 million plus for about 5 to 6 years. The Phillies got him for about $100 million. The Mets could have easily done that. Another $60 million, you would have had a better catcher than James McCann. Offensively, he's 100 times better than James McCann. And everything JT Realmuto does, and it's not like JT Realmuto is experienced in the postseason, but he's got big hits for the Phillies in this postseason. And specifically in Game 1, hitting that home run to right field to give the Phillies the lead and actual win in Game 1. Game 2, the Astros just took advantage, and people want to talk about pitching. Noah wasn't good, and Wheeler wasn't that good. Right? So it's a combination of both, of why you have to be good offensively and have good pitching staffs. I still think the Astros are going to win it in 6. But looking into the Phillies with the Braves and the Phillies with the Padres. The Phillies in the postseason, minus the wild card because they played all 3 games in St. Louis, the Phillies have not allowed the opposing team to get back to their home stadium. They finished the job in their ballpark. That was with Atlanta, and now it's with the Padres. So I don't expect it, I don't expect the Phillies to win 3 straight here, but it's something to look at that the Phillies have not let the opposing team go back home to a game 5 or a game 6 in the opposing team's ballpark. The Phillies have avoided that. Can they do that once again against the Astros and win the World Series in their ballpark and not let the Astros go back to Houston for game 6 or game 6 or a possible game 7? We will see. I do think the Phillies are going to win tonight because I think the momentum is on their side. I do think both pitchers are going to get rocked in this game. I'm expecting a high-scoring ball game. Again, game 2, 7 runs. Game 1, 11 runs. So expect a high-scoring game. I expect the Phillies are going to win 5-4, but I think the Astros are going to take the next 2 games going into Houston, game 6, up 3-2, and that's when they're going to win the World Series, their second World Series in 5 years. And I expect the Phillies to lose, and that is not a shot at the Phillies because it is an astonishment. And you know what? Giving a ton of credit to the Phillies for what they did. After they fired Joe Girardi and Rob Thompson came aboard, they've been a totally different team. But they always had talent on that team. Maybe they just needed the right guy to manage their team. It seems that's the reason because they had basically the same team for almost the entire year. Yeah, they brought up Stout, and they traded for Dan Robertson. But other than that, it's basically the same guys for the Phillies. It's not like talent was different. They've just been better. And you know what? Well, you know what? Houston can cheat all they want. And you're not taking away the World Series championship. And you know what? If your team is cheating, you wouldn't give a damn. All right. If the Mets cheated their way to a World Series, congratulations. I'd be freaking happy. You know what? The Yankees were using Apple Watches. Guess what? They didn't do it as good. They didn't cheat better. That's why they didn't win. Too bad. It is what it is. All right. There was teams in the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s that were all using steroids. That one World Series. Are you going to give back the World Series? Why don't you give back the 2009 World Series if you're a Yankees fan? Alex Rodriguez was doped up on steroids in that year. Well, Muttley, that's your choice. And that's you're allowed to do that. You're a fan. But again, it's not like teams don't cheat. I can assure you they do. Right? Sign stealing, no matter which way you want to go about it, is cheating. Right? It is what it is. It really doesn't matter. Right? A lot of people can say, right? Everybody talked about the Dodgers, how good they are. And I kept on saying Dave Roberts is the biggest problem of the Dodgers. And that's why I think the Dodgers should have more World Series. But because of Dave Robertson, they're a joke. Because he manages like shit. Just like Don Mattingly, when he was the Dodger manager, couldn't get over the hump because he managed like crap in the postseason. Well, Muttley, it's not about tolerating cheating. You're a baseball fan, Muttley, right? Well, why are you a baseball fan anymore? There's been cheating going on in the game since it started. The Black Sox, right? We can go on and on about steroids. We can, about drugs being used in baseball, right? There's errors all through baseball history of teams, players cheating. I'm sorry, but if you're a baseball fan, you tolerate cheating because you're still a baseball fan, right? Just because your team didn't get quote unquote caught doesn't mean okay, Muttley. But again, that doesn't mean they're not cheating, right? Why are you a Mets fan? Robinson Cano was doing steroids. You shouldn't be a Mets fan because Robinson Cano cheated, right? It's funny to me. Yeah, Marty. Of course, it's going to be a fallout. Why not? It's obvious. But again, some teams are more blatant, but that doesn't mean they don't cheat. And I'm sorry. all throughout baseball history. I mean, why become a baseball fan if you know that, like, okay, Muttley, but Cano was suspended. And again, then blame the Major League Baseball Players Association for allowing the players on the Houston Astros not to get suspended, right? Why weren't Yankee players suspended because of the Apple Watches? They weren't. You know why? Because the MLBPA wouldn't allow their players to get suspended, right? The cheating scandal, when it comes to cheating in ways like the Astros did, or the Yankees did for that matter, just, you know what? The Yankees didn't cheat well enough. That's why they didn't win, right? They were stealing signs with their Apple Watches and getting picture patterns from the Apple Watches. They didn't do it as well as Houston. So the Yankees shouldn't get punished just as much as the Astros did, right? You know who got punished? People who weren't in the MLBPA. The Yankees got fined. The owner got fined. People in certain departments got fired at the Yankees. The Houston Astros owner, coach, and GM got basically fired or fined. Yeah, Marty, that's what I'm saying. Okay, Marty, again, but I'm not condemning cheating. But you just said you don't tolerate cheating, but you are. Just because you condemn it doesn't mean you're not tolerating it. So you tolerate it, but you condemn it. So your hypocrisy just comes up in the light, right? You condemn the cheating. Great, we all do. But we tolerate it because we're baseball fans, right? Nobody should be a baseball fan then if we tolerate it, right? If you don't tolerate cheating, well, then don't be a baseball fan, right? There's been cheating all throughout baseball history, right? If you're a fan of football, the sticky stuff on his glove, there was, stickum that they used for NFL players back in the day as well. It is what it is. But you're never going to take cheating completely out of the game. Again, Muttley, I'm not saying I'm okay with it. But Dodger fans waved the banner. Oh, excuse me. Astro fans waved the banner for the 2017 World Series. You know why? Because nobody cares enough as a fan base with the Astros. Yeah, Muttley, they did, but you know what? There's been more scrutiny and eyes on the Astros because of their cheating scandal, yet they consistently still are the best, still continue to be the best team in baseball and a really good team. Make the playoffs every year, make the World Series again, made the ALCS 6 years in a row. 5 of those years they weren't cheating, or 4 of those years they weren't cheating. But that doesn't mean the Yankees weren't cheating either. Maybe they weren't as good. Maybe the Mets were cheating this year. That's why they have 101 wins. But you know what? Maybe they didn't cheat good enough in the playoffs. The Padres, Joe Musgrove, for all we know, he was cheating. But guess what? It is what it is. Because there is no doubt in my mind that every team cheat. Just because the Astros did it better than everybody else, I can assure you, why do you think teams, for the most part, weren't really up in arms about Houston? For the most part, unless you played them. Like the Dodgers brought it up, the Yankees brought it up because they lost to them. But let's be honest, teams weren't overly going crazy about the Houston Astros. You know why? Because there were teams doing the exact same thing. May it not be as blatant as banging on a trash can or a camera in center field, but they were using other forms of sign stealing that was illegal that they didn't get caught. Well, Muttley, you don't know that because the Yankees couldn't hit in the postseason, right? In that series, at home or on the road. Sign stealing was only about the offense. Why couldn't the Yankees pick them to a victory? They couldn't, right? Should the Oakland Athletics give away their championships in the 80s because of the steroids that they were using? It was widely known that McGuire and Canseco were using steroids, and amongst other players, No, because everybody else was doing it. You know, is it different steroids that they were using that made them better? It is what it is. But I can assure you, if the Yankees won the World Series by banging trash cans, Yankee fans would be on the defense, just like Astro fans are. Mets fans were banging a trash can, or if the Mets in 2022 were banging the trash cans and won a World Series and got caught, Mets fans would be on the defense. No fan would be giving back the World Series. Guess what? Cheat better. You can be a baseball fan. All right, but they are getting suspended. But again, it comes down to the union as well. The reason why Altuve and Correa and Springer and Verlander and Cole, for that matter, didn't get suspended because the MLBPA wouldn't allow the information to come out from players that the Astros were cheating. Because the only reason why the Astros got caught was because the MLBPA wanted immunity from those players to talk about the cheating and how it was done, and there would be no repercussions and fines or suspension from the players. So we would have never known about the cheating scandal if it wasn't for the MLBPA and the Major League Baseball giving immunity to those players to talk about the cheating. And yes, when it came about what's his name, the YouTube guy, I forgot his name, that caught that cheating scandal, but it was more about him when there was information coming out from the players when they got the immunity that talked about that video came out about the trash cans. I forgot his name, Jesus. The Talking Yanks guy or the Talking Baseball guy. Well, the union's been around for a long time. It's one of the strongest unions in the country. So, well, if you can't support any team, then you can't support baseball then. Because there's cheating still happening. Why are you supporting the game of baseball, let alone supporting a team, right? Because Cano was a part of the Mets organization you root for that allowed Cano to cheat. You're going to tell, I'm sorry. I am not naive enough to think that a team, an organization who is all over baseball, was all over their players with conditioning and exercising and therapy and fixing themselves and getting them better and rehab and all that stuff. And you're going to tell me organizations, teams that basically check on these guys almost 24/7 don't know that their guys are taking, their players are not using steroids? Come on. That's just ridiculous. All right. I'm sorry. You don't think the San Diego Padres knew Fernando Tatis was taking this type of substance? You didn't think the Mets didn't know that Robinson Cano was taking steroids? Come on. Well, you know what? Teams know their players are doing something wrong. I'm sorry. All right, I'm not talking about in the home, beating up their wives like Marcelo Ozuna. Okay? Or Jose Reyes, right? In their home. I'm talking about using steroids, and you're gonna tell me these teams don't know? Come on. These guys are so baby nowadays by their organization that we don't know that this organization is not doing them. I'm sorry. The fact of the matter is, if you support baseball, you support what goes on in baseball. That goes for steroids. That goes for cheating scandals, which is like the Astros. Okay, but baseball is doing that. And fans still came back. There's at least one player on every team that I guarantee are using steroids. Might have not gotten caught, might have already gotten caught. Don't support the sport then. I don't know what else to tell you. If you don't support a player, right, you shun the player, you're all out on that player. But that same player was getting paid and watched by the organization. The organization has not to blame for that. So if the Mets did what the Astros did, right? It wasn't well, Muttley, you're enjoying the game, but you're enjoying the game based on cheaters and liars. You're being hypocritical. You just said you don't tolerate it. So if you don't tolerate that stuff, then why watch? You enjoy the game, but you enjoy the game, and then tomorrow you'll find out that that game is 5 players, 3 or 4 players, 2 on each team. Muttley, no, you can't assume everyone is cheating, but you can't assume that they're not cheating either. So what you're doing, you're going into the game saying, I can't think these guys are cheating, and then when they cheat, I condemn them. Why? You just watched the entire game. It's kind of you're being hypocritical in the sense that you're saying you're not tolerating it, but yet you're still watching the sport of baseball. Who in baseball in history has all been throughout history about cheating, right? It's crazy to me. If do you support the Black Sox? No. With their cheating scandal, you support you dislike what the Astros did. Of course you do. I wish no player took steroids. But you know what? If my team wins, do you think I really give a shit? Well, Muttley, you really watch, but thank you for the support of the channel. But you are watching a Mets channel, right? I can assure you, you're on YouTube watching other baseball channels. You watch opening day in 2023 against the Marlins in Miami. You'll be watching. Again, you watch one game, you support Major League Baseball. All right? It's just a matter of, again, Muttley, you're already going. You just said you're supporting the game. You enjoy the game. Well, Muttley, I don't know. I don't know. For all we know, the Yankees cheated this year, but nobody talks about it because they lost. Do you think anybody would have gave a damn if the Astros lost the World Series to the Dodgers about cheating? No, nobody would have gave a damn. But if you're gonna enjoy the game, go into the game, enjoying the game, Muttley. As you said, you can't expect that everyone's cheating. Okay, that's fine. But why can't you? If you're going into the game naive enough to think that nobody's cheating, and then you find out after the fact that somebody was cheating, well, you were just a product, or you just got duped into thinking that nobody was cheating, but they actually were. So you supported a brand, a sport that was cheating. Again, everybody tries to get a leg up, right? It is what it is. Muttley, that's not true. But again, but that's the problem. That's why Major League Baseball and sports in general has a huge problem with that. And that's why fans should have a problem with that. Because everybody is up in arms after the fact. But it's still a problem. You can't go into a game thinking that everybody is just, walking that straight line, because it's not happening. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, I can guarantee that there's at least one player on every team that is taking steroids. Just because they didn't get caught means that that's okay. But Muttley, you're not listening. I do have a problem with that. I do have a problem with cheating. I do have a problem with players using steroids. But I'm not going to stop watching or rooting for my team because there's a possibility that a player on my team is cheating or my organization is cheating to win. You know what? There's a possibility that me and you might walk out my house and get hit by a car tomorrow. That's a possibility, but guess what? You're still going to walk out of your house and go to work or go shopping, right? If there's a possibility of anything happening, why even leave the comfort of your own home? There's a possibility this house might blow up, but I'm still here, right? You don't expect something to happen every single moment of every single day. Mike, why are you supporting? I don't understand. Mike, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like some clips, I don't know. Why am I on YouTube? I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Why are you supporting the channel? All right, but those teams paid and supported the player until he got exposed. And I'm sorry, the organizations know who are doing what. They don't expose them because they're not allowed to expose them as an organization because the MLPA will come after them, and that's a lawsuit. Because if you don't realize that, even a player taking steroids is still a medical issue, and you can't put out medical information about a player unless the player agrees to it or the MLBPA agrees to it. That's why when you hear about these weird injuries sometimes and you're not talking and the team doesn't say exactly what the injury is because the player doesn't want you to. They have the right to do that. But when you get a drug test by Major League Baseball and it comes up positive, you are no longer a person of that union where the MLBPA has a joint agreement with Major League Baseball that you are suspended, and that's why they're not paid because they're not a part of the union when they're suspended from steroids. They're not a part of the union until they come back. Because if they were a part of that union, they would still be getting paid by the organization. So the organization knows these players are doing sketchy crap. So if you support the team that houses and puts this player in the organization, condemn the team as well. And again, if you are a baseball fan, you support the history of cheating because that's what we see throughout history with baseball. Why do you think the biggest drop in attendance and fans that didn't stop, in the 90s with the strike that had nothing to do with cheating, had everything to do with greedy players and owners, lost a lot of fans in the 94 season? And why? Viewership and attendance at stadiums were at an all-time low from after the 94 strike until, guess what? The home run chase of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, and at some point Ken Griffey Jr. And it was all about steroids. Steroids was running rampant in the late 80s and the 90s. Baseball wouldn't be what we know it today if it wasn't for that home run race, because it brought baseball back on the map. It brought fans back. So Muttley, all the arguments that me and you put, look at the home run race in 98 and how many fans it brought back into baseball. And it all was because the players cheated. Very simple. So for all the fans that don't like cheating, were the same fans that were so couldn't wait for Mark McGwire to come to the plate and Sammy Sosa and Ken Griffey Jr. in the 98 season, going after the Maris record. Everybody was enamored by Barry Bonds. Everybody knew he was taking steroids. The guy was 150 pounds wet. All of a sudden, he's 250 pounds, has a bigger head than anybody in baseball, and everybody just assumed that he was just hitting home runs because he's Barry Bonds? I don't even understand that. We are a product. We are a fan base of baseball, knowing that throughout history, this organization, Major League Baseball, is known for cheating throughout their history. Baseball is what we know it now because of the steroid cheating that everybody wants to not put them in a hall, put people in the Hall of Fame and frown upon with steroids now. But yet steroids brought back Major League Baseball to what it is now because of that home run chase. All right, Muttley, you could be okay with it. You can not be okay with it. But you still support the game of baseball. So at any moment when you turn on the TV, if you don't think that one player of those two teams that you were watching on TV or you're at the ballpark is not cheating, then whatever you talk about that you don't support, you're not fine with it. But yet you're supporting my channel, which I appreciate. This is a good conversation. But Molly, attendance rose during that time because of steroid scandal. But nobody cared. Everybody knew Mark McGwire was on steroids, and Sosa, and Barry Bonds. They all knew, but nobody cared at the moment. And I can assure you, you probably didn't either. And if you say you do, well, you're probably lying to yourself and everybody else. Stop being naive. You know what? If you're a working person, I can assure you your company did something sketchy to get to the top of the food chain and be in a top organization. Muttley, yes, there was talk about Aaron Judge cheating. Nowadays, everybody assumes the player is cheating. I don't think Aaron Judge was cheating. I think he did it on pure talent because he's a monster of a human being. But that doesn't mean there's not some skepticism about a player, right? If somebody steals 67 bases or breaks the stolen base record, does somebody think that he took steroids? Who knows? Okay, and Garrett Cole, right? Jacob deGrom won a Cy Young. People talked about him cheating, right? Everybody thought after the sticky stuff was done, oh, maybe Jacob deGrom wasn't the same. Is it going to be the same pitcher? But then he went out there and pitched great, right? Why don't nobody talk about Garrett Cole using the sticky stuff, right? The spider attack. He wasn't the same pitcher he was with the Astros as a Yankee. He was cheating. Nobody wants to talk about that. Well, Muttley, it's not my fault that players are cheating or the organization cheat. I love the game of baseball. I watch the game for the game of baseball. I love the game of baseball. It doesn't matter to me. I don't tell them to stick a needle in their ass. I don't tell the organization to, hey, let's bang trash cans and have a camera in center field to steal the signs. Again, Muttley, I'm not fine with it, but I love the game of baseball, right? You just said you support the game of baseball. So what? You just said you support the game of baseball. I support the game of baseball because I love baseball. You just said you support baseball. You clearly love baseball, right? You're on a baseball channel. I don't understand. If you support the game of baseball, then you don't have to agree what the players do or the organization do to get the upper hand, which is fine. You don't have to. Again, you say I'm okay with it. I'm not. But I'm not going to stop watching baseball because these players or these organizations do what they do. All throughout history, they've done that. So you supported baseball at a time where it was the darkest moment in baseball during the steroid era. right? Why are you watching baseball? You should have lost all hope for baseball after the cheating scandal with the Astros. But you're on a baseball channel, which I'm grateful for you supporting the channel. But you watch Met games this year. You watch baseball games this year. Why have you supported the game of baseball? But yes, it is. You're supporting the game of baseball. Okay, you support the game. How do you support the game? You watch on TV? You can't support the game of baseball and not watch any games, buy any jerseys, or go to any games or watching TV or buying a jersey. You clearly watch the game. Okay, Muttley, you don't. Again, I don't ask you to subscribe. Okay, but any channel is supporting the game of baseball. You support the game of baseball, so you're basically going after your own hypocrisy. You can't say you support the game, but you don't tolerate what the players do or the organization does. Supporting one game a year. You watch one Mets game all year, Muttley. You supported the game of baseball. And just because you don't agree doesn't you don't agree with cheating, which is fine. You don't have to. But the majority of fans that left baseball during the strike of '94 came back because players were cheating. And nobody cared because it was better for the game at that moment. That home run race was polarizing. No, Muttley, I completely destroyed Robinson Cano. But the problem is that organizations, after his suspension was over, right, he went to the Braves, right? The Braves organization gave him a chance, right? After the steroid situation and got suspended, the Mets traded for Robinson Cano. So you're a Mets fan. You supported that trade knowing that Cano was already a known steroid user? I don't appreciate I don't appreciate what the Astros did. But there was organizations, there was players not on the Houston Astros that knew about what the Astros were doing. And nobody said nothing about it until after players got immunity throughout baseball. You don't think players on other teams knew that the Astros were cheating? They didn't want to say nothing because they knew their own team was cheating in some type of way. But until the players got immunity and couldn't get in trouble or fined or suspended, there would have never been any known facts that the Astros cheated until Major League Baseball gave players immunity to talk about the cheating scandal. The same that went for the steroids, that went all the way to Congress, gave them immunity to talk about it. And until that report came out that when there was anonymous testing to see if there was rampant steroid use within baseball, was supposed to be anonymous, came out. Nobody gave a damn about steroids until that report came out. And again, you supported the baseball channel. I'm probably not the only one. So you should unsubscribe to every channel because I can assure you they support the game of baseball. No matter, right? There should be no fans in baseball left after the cheating scandal of the Astros because they weren't the only team cheating, right? What about Spider Tech last year? There was pitches all around baseball that were using Spider Tech on every team. Scherzer spoke about it. Bassett spoke about it. Cole spoke about it. Players all around the league. Glass now talked about why he got Tommy John was because he stopped using Spider Tech and had to change his arm grip about it. So Spider Tech should have stopped you from being a fan of baseball. Okay, Muttley, and I agree with you. You support it the way you want to support it. You don't want to watch a baseball game in April, May, and June, but you'll turn it on in July for one game. You supported the game. But you don't support Cano. I don't support Cano because I think he was the cheater, but yet our own Mets team traded for him. The Braves got him on a league minimum after they already know he got suspended twice. So it goes back to the fact that everybody has their opinion and their individual decision on what you support and don't support. But you support one game, you support the entire aspect of Major League Baseball. The players get paid by the organization. The organization brings in a player. If that player fails a test or cheats, all right, Muttley, but Robinson Cano wasn't about money. The Atlanta Braves brought in Robinson Cano because when Albies went down, they needed a second baseman. They thought they were going to hit lightning in a bottle with Robinson Cano. Did they care about the steroids? No. They saw that they can possibly, that Cano can help them win and fill a spot on the roster. That's it. It wasn't about money. It cost the Braves money. If Major League Baseball really wanted to take a stance on it, if you get caught once, you're out of baseball. Do it that way. I would be on board with that. The hell with second chances. You cheated in a way that is illegal. Get rid of them. I think we can agree with that. I don't think it's fair that a player that makes millions and millions of dollars can continue to cheat and still, after he gets suspended, comes back and makes the same money and can possibly do that again. Exactly, Muttley. And I can do whatever I want, just like you can do whatever you want. I'm not condemning what you believe in. If you believe what you believe in, that's fine. That's the whole point of this. You can only believe what you want to believe. But, Muttley, I'm not getting on what you believe and what you want to support. But you just said you don't tolerate the cheating, but you support the game. But when you support the game, you support all aspects that is involved with the game. Just because you don't agree with certain things, right? I don't agree that the Mets should have signed James McCann, but when he comes up to the plate, I hope he hits a home run. I'm going to cheer him, but I will boo him when he strikes out. There's a lot of parts of the game I don't like, or aspects or decisions that players or organizations make that I don't agree with. But again, I'm not saying you don't love baseball, but your own comment, you said you support the game of baseball, but you don't tolerate the cheating. Well, you don't tolerate cheating, but you support the game of baseball. So if you support, if you love the game of baseball, go play baseball, go play pickup games, go play Stratomatic. Don't watch Major League Baseball at all. Don't go to any games. Don't buy any jerseys. Don't watch 1 second of baseball because you support 1 second of a game. You support everything that is involved, even if you don't agree with everything. No baseball fan agrees with everything. I don't agree with the runner on second. Doesn't mean I turn off the baseball game if it goes to the 10th inning because I don't like the runner on second. No, I'm still going to watch. Okay, exactly what many people do what? Play baseball? Good for them. But again, you're telling me I agree with cheating. I don't. But I'm not going to stop watching baseball if you, Muttley, let me put it this way. If okay, that's fine. But you know what? Sign stealing wasn't a rule either, right? There was no rule of what the Astros did was illegal. It's only become a rule after they got caught. So technically, the Houston Astros weren't cheating based on the rules of Major League Baseball. No, because it's called passion. Some people don't have that. And that's the problem, right? The Houston Astros didn't get players didn't get in trouble because of immunity, but owners get fined and office executives got fired, not because they broke the rules of 2017. They got fired and suspended and all that other stuff involved with consequences was because they got caught and because Major League Baseball had no choice but to do what they had to do because the backlash. No, trust me, I'm far from warding, okay? All right? I don't wave pom-poms at every moment of every day, all right? The point of this whole conversation is, if you want to talk about that, the Houston Astros didn't break a rule of Major League Baseball, right? They used the camera in center field and banged the trash can. Sign stealing, right? Sign stealing isn't breaking a rule of Major League Baseball at that moment, right? The rule that came in 2019 was no team can use electronics to steal signs. That wasn't a rule in 2017. Not until 2019, it wasn't a rule. So, according to the rule of 2017, there was none. So the Houston Astros didn't break any rules. They got suspended and fined and fired because of the backlash, and they got caught of what they were doing, of stealing signs on the way they did. But for all we know, there was 5 or 6 teams that were doing the exact same thing the Astros were, but the Astros won the World Series, so the spotlight was on them. I appreciate your passion and your opinion and your thoughts about what you support or don't support and the game of baseball. But the matter is, people are still going to watch baseball, right? People kept watching baseball after the cheating scandal with the Astros, which wasn't a rule until it was. And, I wish nobody took steroids, but you have to be naive to the fact that there's players that are going to try to get a jump on other players, right? Organizations use analytics. They continue to lose analytics. They try to be better. They try to one-up another team. It's constant. But it is what it is. And no matter how you love the game of baseball, you love it in your own way. So with that said, I'll be coming on live stream at 7:30 for the Astros and Phillies World Series Game 3. So tune in for that. I will see you guys in about an hour and a half. Good conversations about the plan the Mets can have in the offseason based on who we think we should get. And we all think that this Mets team is going to look very different than the 2022 Mets, and we shall see. Game 3, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be a 5-4 Astros win, and we'll see with that. So with that said, I'll see you guys at 7:30 for Game 3 of the World Series. Muttley, anytime, buddy. Everybody, have a good night. See you in about an hour and a half. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. See you in about an hour and a half. Have a good night.
Stadium, the big story, Mets 86. Exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.